Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. We got Steve Fleck in the co-captain's chair once again. We're going to talk a little Marillion today. So a lot of people asking for Marillion, Steve. I did with Stephen Reed, did a Marillion ranking the studio albums, there's a lot of albums here. But people still wanted to hear a Top 10 song show on Marillion. I figured you'd be the guy to do it because we've been kind of listening to Marillion together for a long time, and I feel like this would be fun, right? This would be fun.
I saw your top 10 albums show, which was a great show, and made for a real good watch. And yeah, to your point, we've been listening for a long time. Another for those of you watching out there, another one of the bands that Pete got me into. Said you got to hear these guys, and took me right by storm immediately. So long time indeed, my friend.
But hard to pick out 10 favorite songs because I think there's a lot of really good songs, and I think
very difficult.
Hard for me because I favor one or era over the other pretty significantly. Though I know both eras, I know one better than the other. I know the other pretty well. And I had a hard time. I wanted to make sure that I kind of cover a lot of the bases, and I didn't want my entire top 10 to be either from one album or from two albums. So, but it worked out pretty well because I do have some really strong favorite tracks from later in the career, and as well as a ton of favorites from early on. So I don't know how tough this was for you. I found this a little difficult, but I almost called you and said, "Hey, could we do like a top 20 or something like that?" And I was like, "No, can't do that.
Yeah,
gotta stay with the concept here, right?" So
yep, I would agree. It was really tough on my end. One of the tougher ones that I've done, and obviously you've done a ton more of these than I have. But just in thinking about it. It's very, like you said, there's two eras. Basically, one could easily do a show on both the bands, even though it's the same band. So, I could say both the eras, but so, yeah, it was extremely, testing to kind of put these together without, like you say, leaning too heavily on one or two albums, which is kind of difficult. And
yeah,
I tried to show a little restraint where I could.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pick what your gut tells you, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. But they have, this band has a couple of albums. I know in talking to people who like Marillion and doing the show with Stephen Reed and kind of getting his feedback on, because he really loves the Hogarth era, and there are some of the albums in the Hogarth era that are really treasured by a lot of fans, the same as some of the Fish era ones are. So. Yeah, so kind of a tough list to put together, but I'll let Steve kick it off with his number 10.
Okay, so we're going right to the heart of the matter here. Coming from one of my favorite albums, the title track called Fugazi.
Fugazi's great.
My number 10.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, dig the track a lot, dig the album a lot. To me, it was their... Fugazi to me is the album that showed that they were off and running. First album was a huge statement. To me, things got really, the traction started to really, really hit the road with Fugazi. And it was really tough to isolate one song from this album. It's just a fantastic album, soup to nuts. Not everyone feels that way, but I definitely do, and it's tough to, categorize and pick and choose one song on Fugazi over another one. Really difficult.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those early albums, you can kind of say the same thing about. Yeah, I agree. My number 10, I'm going to go to 1995. Title track 2, Afraid of Sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of like poignancy and emotion in this song, which I really like. And I think the chorus is just absolutely unbelievable. And I don't know, there's this emotion that they hit on this song that I think is one of the better moments of this period. So this is, not long after Hogarth. Well, it's a few years after Hogarth joined, but I think if you look at those first like 3 or 4 Hogarth era albums, I think this is for me one of the highlights. Just such a great song on a very solid album. I do like this album quite a bit, and I've always loved the title track. So that's my number 10.
Well, that is a very fine choice. As a matter of fact, it's also my choice.
Number 9.
Number 9.
There you go.
Number 9. Can't say enough about the tune. You said everything there is to say about it. In addition, the album I think is just a fantastic album. Really, one that requires repeated listenings. And there's just a ton of really, really quality material on the album. Quality performances, which we can probably get to when we get to some of the honorable mentions here. But I will echo what you said about Afraid of Sunlight. Just an absolute highlight, and definitely one of the highlights of that whole earlier Hogarth era. It's just a fantastic song. Totally.
What a vocal on that too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just something about it. Just all really does come together on that one. And it is kind of a trilogy because there's what is it? Afraid of losing it here. It's probably on my B list, but this song kind of comes.
Afraid of Sunrise. Yeah.
Yes. Afraid of Sunrise. And then there's the, I want to say the one regarding the true life story, Can't Come Out of This World, about the guy who tried sailing. And I don't remember enough about the topic, but yeah. And this one comes, I think, last in that trilogy. And it's, Out of This World, stuff describes this song.
Yep, exactly. My number 9 from Fugazi. Assassin will be assassinated, my friend. Gotta love Assassin, man. Just I had a hard time because I love this album a lot, and I thought about picking Fugazi. I love Punch and Judy a lot. I mean, the whole album is really, really strong, but there's something about Assassin I think that has always really endeared itself to me. And if you ever heard them play this live, like if you watch clips or listen to clips of the band back in the day, really good live track as well. So that's my number 9. Fun song. My friend.
Totally agree about, Assassin, approach my list. I mean, again, it's very difficult to separate those songs on that album because they're all so strong. I don't know. To me, the build-up that start the album with Assassin, with those Middle Eastern styled scales on the synth, I want to say it is. And then the guitar builds and the drums come in very tribally. And this is the arrival of, our buddy on the drums. So this is, this is a statement. Like I said, it builds a lot of traction. And this song really is a great album opener. And that straight forward, kick drum, bass drum with that very funky, rothery kind of, cleanish. Don't know what he was playing there, but some kind of a Fender, I think. And it just, was a great compliment to the keyboards on the song and the driving vocals of Mr. Fish on this, and just, spewing vitriol at his finest. Yeah, I love it.
And this band always had, no matter what the album, this band always had really strong album openers, I thought, like almost all the time.
It's a very good point. Yeah, very good point.
All right, where are we at? Number 8 for you.
Number 8 for me. It was tough for me to put this where it is, but considering all of the competition and all the great songs from all the great eras, as you know well, Pete, you also know my affinity for this album, so this will not surprise you. But I had to go with my number 8 as the Great Escape, which is from Brave, which includes The Last of You and Falling from the Moon. So I don't think I cheated there because it is not 2 songs. It's, an A and a B portion.
Yep.
And, to me, that is the pinnacle. Afraid of Sunlight is almost there. To me, that Great Escape, The Last of You, Falling from the Moon is the pinnacle of that band, that era of the band and its effectiveness. Not to say that they hadn't reached, high since then, which they definitely have. But to me, this was just the crowning achievement on that album. Emotional roller coaster of an album, which I could do an entire show on. But those of you watching No Brave, you know what I'm talking about. This, the vocals and the complementary guitar fills from Rothery, the vocals of Hogarth, just build to such a crazy emotional conclusion here. You don't know what's more emotional here, is the Hogarth hitting those high, belting those high conclusive notes, or Rothery just, tasteful as he's always done, just running up and down the fretboard and creating new ways to make a guitar cry, right? So just fantastic song, fantastic album. There it is, my number 8.
I almost wanted to pick something from that album, but that album just kind of like flows so well together, almost as like one, not one long piece, but I found it really hard to pick out tracks from that album.
Totally agree with that.
Whereas I didn't have that same problem picking out tracks from Clutching at Straws. I don't know why, even though Clutching kind of all works together, but some of these songs you can kind of plop out of here. They're still dynamite on their own, whereas for me, Brave is like one whole piece. And if that makes any sense.
Yep.
My number 8
makes total sense.
I almost didn't include this one, but I just had to, and it almost doesn't even fit on this album, but it's just a great friggin' song, Incommunicado. Just love it.
Yeah.
I love Mark Kelly's keyboards on it. It's the one big and bouncy and symphonic song on this album, and it's just, and you can just see Fish up there singing, all 6 foot whatever him, and just a fun song. Incommunicado. So
yeah, I love the song. I get what you're saying about it kind of being a little bit out of place, because it is, at least musically bouncy, fun. I think in the video he was wearing that big loose-fitting kind of Scottish tweed suit and making all kinds of faces. And so, it is a fun track on an album full of really decidedly unfun.
It's definitely not a fun album. Yeah, I love it for it, but it's
it's an easy piece to include. It was one, it definitely reaches my honorable mentions, and one that I absolutely considered for the top 10. Absolutely did. Can't say enough about that. For my number 7, I'm going to go back to Fugazi, and I'm going with Punch and Judy. I think, what is it, the second song on the album, probably?
Yep.
Just that crazy, I think it's 4/4, but I may be missing. They might have thrown a 5/4 in there, but the synth starting it out, and just the odd kind of tom beats that Ian Mosley brings in, and it's just a killer smasher of a hard rock track, with some really fantastic lyrics, worth another show on their own, right? And I just love the way it flows. That little double bass drum for me, and just I love the track, and just another great song on Fugazi. What can I say?
Punch. Jude, punch. Yeah. I love that. It's simple, but it works, right? Works really well. Yeah, it's a great song. That is in my honorable mentions. I love that song quite a bit. I had a hard time leaving it off, but with 10, you can only fit so much, right? So,
yeah.
All right, my number 7, going to go to this gem of an album, 1989, Season's End. Had to have Easter on this list. Easter for me is just heart-tuggingly beautiful and emotional, and that's what I like about a lot of the early Hogarth era albums, because I think he really kind of touched on that like deep, poignant emotion, which he's good at that anyway, right? But I get more of that in the first couple of albums he did with the band, up until probably like Brave. There are certain songs that I think just reach out and just grab you by the heart, massages your heart, lets you know everything is okay, but you're feeling that kind of emotion. And I get that with Easter. Just the lyrics and the chorus and the verses are just like, you just listen to it and it just kind of picks you up and just takes you away on a journey. And that's what a good song does, right? So
Oh yeah.
That's my number. And I remember, I think it was the first time we saw them with Hogarth early on, and they played that. And I was like, oh, man. In fact, I'm not even sure. Do they still play that live? I don't know. Maybe they do. I know it's one of their endearing hits. Who knows? I don't know.
It is. It was a live staple for so long, and to your point, it is just a special song. And it's one that I could have easily injected into my top 10. I think it might have even been there at one point, and just very, very tough not to have it in there for me anyway. But I totally agree with your inclusion of it. It's
That
soaring.
whole extended ending, man, is just great. It's just great.
No, it is the way it works. The way those little kind of bell-like synths of the late '80s, early '90s really kind of propel it along. And Hogarth's vocals, fantastic. Like you said, he does, especially on those early albums with the band, have that ability to just emotionally pull you in. And this is a perfect early example of what he did. What a fantastic voice the guy had, and still I haven't seen them in ages, but the last time I saw them live, he was just as fantastic. Just a gripping singer, and really love that song. And one of the absolute, I think to me, the high point of that album of Seasons End is Easter, hands down.
Yep. Cool.
So
right.
on to my number 6. All right, now it gets more difficult, as you know, as this plugs along. But number 6, I'm going to go with Sláinte Maith. Another absolute highlight, from, exactly, Clutching at Straws. Kind of easy, as you said, to pull songs from this. Less so Brave. For whatever reason, it's a shorter album, and it lends itself a little more distinctly than maybe Brave or Misplaced Childhood does at pulling single songs out of it for whatever reason. I think it's a little more of a succinct. Plus, both of those would have been, well, we know Misplaced was a double album, and actually Brave was too. So just less material. But Sláinte Maith is just, I mean, what can be said about the opening piano line, the crashing of the rhythm section, and Rothery's creamy kind of like number 4 switch on the Strat with that kind of crunchy, clean yet dirty, aggressive rhythm, and the chords with probably one of my favorite Fish vocals of all time. What more can be said about it? What a great chorus, a great build, and I could easily put this song much higher.
Yeah, I love the playful Fish vocal on that, and yeah, that it's a great track. It's like I said, we were talking before we went and recorded this, that my entire top 10 could have been all Clutching at Straws tracks, and that's one of the many that are great on here. Yeah, I can't complain about that one at all. That's a great one. It's a classic from this album. I'm gonna go back to the well for this one too. Where do we go from here? Because Uzi's on the street corner, Little White Russian. I mean, could have been higher too. Just man, just a phenomenal album with so many great songs. White Russian is just the lyrics to the song, and I'm not much of a lyric guy, but the lyrics to this song and most of this album are just very personal and just they're quirky. You can kind of relate, right? That's like, I think a lot of people can really dig on lyrics that you can kind of relate to. I think whether it's something you either lived through before, or people who have, or you just the story that they're trying to tell just is very human and makes a lot of sense. And I think that White Russian is just magical song, musically and vocally, lyrically, the whole 9 yards. The chorus is great, the verse is great, and you just kind of you think of the song and you just kind of, all these lines, I just repeated a couple of them before, and it's just classic Fish era Marillion.
It is, totally agree. Support your points on all of that, and we'll get to that track a little bit later. So for me, this is going to be my first visit, but not my last, to this unbelievably amazing album, and it's going to be Suda Silk Kimono, Kaylee, and Lavender, which are packaged that way on the album. So it's not me cheating. It's not 3 songs in one, but it's packaged that way. You can't really say more than I can say here about those 3 songs. Suda Silk Kimono is kind of, it's the keyboard intro we all know well, to one of the strongest and most sweat-inducing, emotional, roller coastery concept albums of all time, isn't it? And Kaylee, obviously huge for that band breakthrough with that single. Lavender, bringing out that recurring melody that, rears its head throughout the album. Just really, this sets the stage, and to your point, Pete, another great opener from the band, opener to an album. And this just really is a stage setter, like most excellent concept albums have. It's setting you up for what is to come, and this is a kind of makes me think that although they're totally different albums and different concepts, and it makes me think of that opening overture to the Dream Theater Scenes from a Memory, because there, that whole instrumental passage, which is a great amount of that, is keyboards and melodies, which kind of summarize what's to come. That's kind of where you have Suda Silk Kimono, Kaylee, and Lavender, because those themes appear throughout, but it sets you up for what's to come. And those are just fantastic songs, and Kaylee was a huge hit for the band, and that really didn't have hits, and they're no less strong because they were hits. Fantastic stuff.
Yep, I agree. I love Misplaced Childhood, but kind of like with Brave, I didn't pick anything from that album because I could have, just like you did, and I thought about it, and I was like, oh man, I just have a hard time picking stuff out of that album. I don't know what it is, but I do love it. So in case anybody's wondering, why Pete's not picking any Misplaced Childhood or Brave stuff, I love both those albums. They both rank pretty high on my album ranking show, but just had a hard time pulling individual songs out from. That's all. But I do love it. So where are we at? Number 5, right? Number 5. How about the title track to this one? We're going back to Season's End again. Heart-tugging stuff on that. I as much as I love Easter, I think I like the title track here even just a little bit better. And an amazing vocal from Hogarth on this. Just love it. Such a dramatic song. Again, it's got that like extended ending to it. Just brilliant stuff. Love both of those songs to death. So and number 5 is coming up pretty high on the list for me. That's how much I dig it. So
no, that says a lot. Again, very strong track on an album full of strong tracks in Season's End. Hitting my number 4 here is going to be one that will be very familiar to you, and that will be the aforementioned White Russian. You said everything there is to be said about that. One thing I might add is Fish's vocals, especially in the Uzi's on a street corner, just almost percussive in their presentation, to the point where he almost becomes, and I think he's double tracked there, I'd have to go back and listen, but he almost becomes like an instrument. And it's confounding how well, right, the guy had, you want to talk about the battle of the voices, you got Fish and you got Hogarth, Hagar versus, David Lee Roth, right? I mean, each had their own niche, and obviously the singers in both, aspects, in both bands, the singers were clearly the replacement guys, as far as, talented vocalizing and singing ability, but doesn't erase the fact that, the earlier singers were huge personalities.
Yeah.
And that's what you have here with Fish. His vocals, limited as they are and have been, are, just utilized to the hilt in just about all of the albums he did with the band, I think.
There's a charm to his vocals, yeah. And it's interesting how you talk about those classic bands who replaced their singers. So Fish with Hogarth, Roth with Hagar, Ozzy with Dio. I mean, night and day between all those choices, right? Night and day. And when they changed the singers, the music changed as well. as opposed to in more recent times where when bands change singers, they try to get someone who sounds very similar to keep that classic sound intact. That wasn't the case in like the late 70s, early 80s. You replace someone totally different who's going to bring something new to the table, and that's what you did, right? And the fans either stayed on board or they jumped ship. So
yep, absolutely true. Great point. Yeah, and obviously missing, one of our near and dear favorites in Black Sabbath. I mean, that's a clear example, and we all know where that went and how fantastic that was in both aspects. So
yeah, exactly. All right, so my number, where are we at? Number 4. So I'm going to go to an album that I don't think we've touched on yet. So how about go to the debut, the title track, "Script for a Jester's Tear." One of their early little mini epics, right? Dramatic, angry, even quite Genesis-y prog rock, I might say, because I think this first album is hints very much at like kind of Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Foxtrot era Genesis. Fish, I think, really kind of doing that Gabriel thing. I think he would kind of drop that to an extent, probably with Misplaced and going forward. But I think the first 2 albums and even some of the earlier stuff, there's a really strong Genesis flavor. But I had a hard time picking a song from this album. This always been kind of my favorite, but there's a lot of great tunes on this album. And I think you listen to this album and then you listen to like, I'm trying to grab and you listen to this album, okay? And you really can tell how different these, just by the change of singer, how different they are musically, because I think they were doing a lot, on this album, you got long keyboard solos and guitar solos, as more complex arrangements, and just, the vocals are very kind of almost theatrical to an extent, darker themes, both lyrically and musically, and it's just completely different band. Both good for what they are, right? But it's just amazing what a decade can do to a band, right?
Yeah, absolutely true. And those two, that's a good polls to kind of compare. First album and Afraid of Sunlight. I as you know, and to this day still, will never downplay the importance that band, that Steve Hogarth incarnation of the band that produced, Brave and Afraid of Sunlight, which are 2 monumental albums in my catalog, had on me. It was a huge influence on me, in all walks of life. And, I listen very strongly to both of those albums and, hold them very high to this day. And, that's what comes with you. I mean, these are the things that they don't go away easily, these themes. And, obviously the same for me with the earlier Fish fronted albums. I can't extract them from me, just as you can't. They're there, and they're there for all time, and they have a special place. And like you said, the first album very much Genesis influenced, and as I've experienced more and more early Genesis, I can sit here and say, well, what is wrong with that? Nothing.
There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, not at all.
I mean, what they did is they created an 80s version of it, which was a little more punchy, right? A little heavier, a little more punctuated. And, the early 70s Genesis, obviously very much subdued and extremely dynamic, where you'd start, only King Crimson can I think of as an equivalent, rock band that held the dynamics that those early Genesis albums did. You might start an album, dead quiet, and then it'll build, and then the next thing you know, you're being hammered over the head with some crazy kind of dissonance, and that's what you're dealing with. I have no qualms about being influenced by Genesis whatsoever. I think it was a great thing.
Yep. All right, where are we? Number 3. What do you got?
Yeah, let's see. Is it number 3? No, number 2 for me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. No, you're right. Number 3. What did I do here? I must have hit something. Either way, number 3 or number 2. At this point, got to go with Heart of Lothian. Just, again, Misplaced Childhood, and difficult to choose things from that album. Really difficult for me to do so. Um, and I almost feel like, with that and with Brave, just kind of guilty for extracting things from those albums because they just fit so well, to your point. Um, but I chose Heart of Lothian just because that's the high point.
Fabulous. It's fabulous. Yeah.
It just, I remember when I got that live album, just playing that part over and over and over, the Lothian
I
part
was
over and over and over. Yeah.
born.
And just, the way it soars, the way it repeated themes, right, come into play here. And you're like, oh, here comes that theme. And when they bring it up, I was born, with that guitar in the background playing lead while Fish is singing, and just the way it sails and the fact that you've heard it before, makes it all the more stronger when it comes to fruition with all the instrumentation, with Fish's vocals on here. Again, I talk about Fish, you talk about Fish. He's a huge presence, and his vocals really, really matter on all of these releases, and they're extremely effective. Let us not forget the band: Pete Jarvis, Ian Mosley, Mark Kelly on the keyboards, and of course Rothery on the guitar. I mean, the rhythm section was, just a propellant in this band, especially the way Jarvis, with those climbing bass lines, no matter what type of bass or bass sound he had, which did change over the years, which I do appreciate. But here he had this kind of razor sharp edge, kind of trebly, little Chris Squire, but a little more compression maybe thrown in, but just, his lines were melodic as all hell, and continue to be. Everything I've heard from him is just fantastic bass player, and how he and the guys propel these songs along, with Fish at the helm. And Heart of Lothian to me could be easily number one. It's the top. It's the top of their game. What can I say? It's just fantastic stuff. Just, never get tired of listening.
And that's the one song I almost pulled out of Misplaced Childhood to put on my list. It's in my honorable mentions because I love it. It's great. And I do want to say a little something about Pete Jarvis. Great bass player. And I think for me, I finally realized how good of a bass player he is when I started listening to Transatlantic. And he's also a damn good singer too, because in Transatlantic, they all sing in Transatlantic, and he's a really strong singer as well, and probably does a fair amount of backing vocals on all these Marillion albums that you just really never even realized,
Yes. And he was the guy that did the backing vocals live, before, Fish brought in or I say Fish brought in, right? We always, because he probably did, brought in those three, or the two the female backup vocalists, or the one. She might have been just the one.
Yeah.
See, it's such a great idea that we made it seem like it was those three ladies that did the backup on the Pink Floyd albums. It was really just one. That's all it took to complement his stuff. But Roberts he's a treasure. No, I think when we saw Transatlantic and remember when they split, it was at one of the Near Fests, and they split and they did a song from each of their bands, and he did a Marillion song. Was one of the ones, I think it was on Brave, and Jarvis did a vocal, and he did a nice justice to it. I forget which song it was, but it was one of the songs on Brave, if I'm not mistaken. And while he's no Hogarth, he did a very, very respectable job on it.
Yeah, he's got a good voice. Definitely got a good voice. All right, well, the rest of my list is going to be pretty predictable because they're all going to come from this one again. Like I said, I had to stop myself from doing all 10 from this album. So we're going to go with Little Sugar Mice in the Rain, my number 3. I mean, this is so Steve and I go way back, for those of you who don't know, and I can recall, like, in the early 90s, mid 90s, a bunch of us would all be getting together, and we would sit and listen to this album into the wee hours of the morning, singing every word of it at the time in our best Fish impressions. And just like, by the time you get to Sugar Mice, you're feeling it, right? You just, it's just one of those songs that just gets you right here. You feel the lump in your throat, and it's just like, yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything else, or whether it's just a great song. It's one of their more laid back tunes, but the melody is perfect. Just love the little ringing guitar chords. It's just really, really great song. Great song.
Oh yeah. Well, I will add to it because, you hit on, some great points. We all used to get together and end up, somebody might pick up an acoustic and somebody might not. And, we would just kind of sing along with this one. And it's you talk about lyrics and you talk about Fish's ability to tell a story. and how you can pick this song out of his concept album and it fits well on its own. And it tells its own story. If you pick it out even as a single, which of course they didn't do, but even if you did, it tells its own story. It's not necessarily out of place on its own is I guess what I'm trying to say. And, the story, that he paints of, sitting at the bar, kind of reminiscing over, some lamentable happenstances in his life. It can be taken on its own, or it can be taken as part of the concept, which this album is. But it's just a fantastic, fantastic composition, fantastic arrangement, and what a great build. And special shout out again. Here I go to Rothery with that guitar solo, just succinct and tasty to the point of just what else could this guy possibly do, or not do. To create a memorable melody with his playing.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think Rotherwood was always really good at creating memorable solos. And I talk a lot here on the channel about those guitar players who really put a lot of thought and effort into creating those guitar solos. So those guitar solos are like a mini song within the song. You can literally hum along to these guitar solos and you remember every single note. That's a good job and a job well done, right?
Oh, certainly.
And that's one of them.
Yeah, and therefore it should come as no surprise that my number 2 is the same. Sugar Rice. I battled. I looked. There's other songs I could put in there from other albums, but this one just it continues. This album just assaults you, and once it's in you, it's tough to ignore it. And I do kind of toss up between this and its predecessor, which is arguably more famous, certainly more commercially successful for them, but they're both just fantastic. And let's face it, Fish all along with this band was headed to this point and this point only. This is where he was going to stop, and I think he started to really, really come to grips with that. With the Misplaced Childhood album, and then seeing, the development of this album, I think, that's really all he intended to do. And, it's just tough to deny. I think the man was working within confines of maybe producing 4 albums. And that's it. And I think that, you both benefit from it because of the culmination of all of this creativity. And obviously we lament the fact that was the last of it for Fish with the band, but it's something to be said about that finality that I think produced, or allowed this just kind of flowing brilliance to, culminate with this album.
Yeah, I agree. He actually did an interview real recently, like within the last month, where he talked about how he had to leave the band because the band got too big and he couldn't handle it. And just think about that, because Marillion, not a really big band. They had success, maybe internationally in Europe bigger than here, because they really weren't that big here at all. But even that limited success got too much for him. And I would love to talk to him a little bit about that. Fisher, if you're listening, if you answer my emails, I'm trying to get you on the show. Would love to have you so I can talk to you more about it. So hopefully he's watching. So, but anyway, yeah, it just, that was his final statement. That was always meant to be his final statement, because he apparently was having thoughts about doing something else and getting out of the band even before that album. And just interesting when you think about it, because again, not a really, really big band, but some of these musicians and vocalists and songwriters and what have you, their success to them is like a double-edged sword, and they realize it very early on. So,
well, and there is, 2 things, which I think I read what you just said, and funny that tonight we were talking about another band and another guy who was in control of that band who thought the same thing, and that was Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits. Just looking at how big that band had become, he broke it up twice because he just couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point to mention that Fish was that way as well, perhaps even more so because he foresaw that.
Yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be, folks.
That's for sure.
All right, where are we? I'm on my number 2, right? And then you got one left, right? Is that okay?
Yep, correct. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So my 1 and 2 kind of go together, but I separated them. But interestingly enough, my number 2 is actually the song that precedes my number 1. I know Steve probably knows what I'm talking about here. So my number 2 song is actually the kickoff song from Clutching at Straws Again, which is a song called Hotel Hobbies. Hotel Hobbies, just such a, and it's a really cool song because it kind of yeah, exactly, and it's like very quiet, starts to build, and Fish starts telling this whole story, okay, about the the miserable alcoholic right at the bar and all this kind of stuff, and all these all these characters that he comes in contact with, right? But the song actually it's got great melodies. The lyrics are fantastic, and it starts off slow and it just starts to build and build, and it's got these great guitar licks from Rothery and Happy Hour, and Happy Hour. It's amazing, right? And then it leads into my number 1, which I'll get into in a minute. But Hotel Hobby is my number 2 from Clutching at Straws.
Well, in that, I may have cheated here with my number 1 because I included those 3 in my number 1.
I wanted to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that was cheating.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I tried to, I tried to justify my picks by, utilizing some kind of rhyme or reason. And for some reason, I think that either the CD or the LP version that I have of this album includes that within the same groove, or CD. The CD does definitely move, or does it? I don't know.
1, 2, 3. It lists them 1, 2, 3. I don't know.
Does it list them as 1, 2, 3? Yeah.
But I mean, that's the problem with this album, with Brave, with Misplaced Childhood, because you got these songs that just kind of go into each other, and you kind of take them all as one. I mean, I almost did the same thing you just said. I almost included Hotel. We're going to give it all away here, but Hotel Hobbies, Warm Wet Circles, and That Time of the Night. It's all like one continuous track almost, right? They're different because you could pull them out, but you're kind of missing that little segue that leads into each one. I don't know.
And it's more so than Heartbreaker, Living Loving Maid, right? I mean, because those are distinctly two, but it's something that radio DJs always kind of, play against each other, right? Why pick it up here? Let it go where it naturally goes. But I think even more so with Hotel Hobbies, Warm Wet Circles, That Time of the Night, which, I think obviously everybody knows now is my number 1. And let's just say it's 1A, 1B, and 1C.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
But just, I mean, I couldn't tear them apart, to be honest with you. And so that's what I chose. And I mean, Pete summed it all up with his Hotel Hobbies summation. And just when the drums come in with, Ian Mosley's kind of frenetic, top to bottom, Tom Phil's very Neil Peart influenced. Who wasn't influenced by the late great Neil, right? And so there you have that, brilliant execution in bringing the band in, and they bring up the dynamics, bring down the dynamics. I like as a jazz fusion fan, Pete, this as well. The what is it? The vibes in the song. It's probably a synth sound. But it's almost like a Mike Marinari, who actually played on that Dire Straits album, Love Over Gold, adding his contributions to that Love Over Gold song. Those kind of vibes, I just love, that kind of otherworld influence on the keyboards in the song. And then Warm Wet Circles. I'll let you take over the reins now, because you're going to talk about that.
Yeah, Warm Wet Circles is my number 1. It's just, man, just kills me every time. And I think as much as I love it on this album, every time I listen to it, if the studio track, I think of that great performance that these guys did at Lorelei from the Lorelei video. And he's just in Fishes up there. It's just piss and vinegar, right? Because he gets to that point in the song where he's just like, giving it all away. It's just great. And he's up there, his eyes are closed, and he's slapping his belly, right? And he's got the white tank top on and the headband. It's just like, it's just a great visual of a great song. And
the mullet.
Let's see it in the mullet. Yeah.
This is 87, so
Yeah,
88.
exactly. Yep. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a great song. But yeah, I agree with it. It's hard to separate those three tracks. I don't know. Like I said, I could have gone and done. I almost did. I almost was going to do these kind of like little mini suites type of thing, and then I would have.
Mm.
But then you know what? Then my whole list probably would have been this and Misplaced Childhood and Brave stuff. I don't know. It's just like I said. It's a difficult catalog to do this type of format because of the way they arrange their songs on their albums. Because I mean, there's others we haven't even talked about that are equally really good, where they do like these long kind of continuous pieces that are all they're all tracked out and they all have titles to them, but they go together, right? It's just
Yeah.
it's difficult. So,
Yeah.
you got any honorable mentions?
You got another hour?
Dumb question. Yeah, I know, right?
Let me just scrape over them. Obviously, Script, He Knows You Know, Assassin, Jigsaw, Emerald Lies, Incubus, Bittersweet, Lord of the Backstage Freak, Blind Curve, Incommunicado, Sugar Mice, Sugar Mice made my final. The Last Straw, Easter, King of Sunset Town, Splintering Heart, Cover My Eyes, How Can It Hurt, Waiting to Happen, Brave. There's only one song I really don't feel fits on Brave, and that is and I kind of like the track. It's just very out of place, and it's called Paper Lies, and I just don't think it fits in at all.
Good
Whatever.
song. Yeah. You could say that. Yeah.
I even mention it, but anyway, continuing. Gazpacho could have easily been on my top 10.
It was almost in
King,
mine. Yep.
King, beautiful. I even like, and you probably don't. There's a lot of folks that don't. Cannibal Surf Babe, I thought was just a great joke. Hated it when I first heard it. Kind of got back into it again. Yeah, it's a fun song. Not for everybody. Beautiful, Estonia, Map of the World, Genie, Don't Hurt Yourself, You're Gone, Fantastic Place. Marbles was really, really a excellent album. Had a little fluff in it, but really, really, to me, I think that's where I end with them. I'm pretty much, sad to say, yeah, that's where I end with Marillion. I just didn't go further. I listened to some of the albums after Marbles, and it just didn't hit me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's another topic for another time. But I really, we saw him on that tour. I just thought Marbles was really, really solid, really good, kind of return formish, and also very, innovative. So yeah, your honorables, my friend.
Well,
My friend.
this my friend. I actually came very close to putting Grendel in my top 10.
I you might.
I almost pulled a mulligan. I almost pulled a mulligan and had Grendel with a tie for number 10 with Afraid of Sunlight. I almost did that, but I said,
That's a
you know what?
B-side.
I won't do that, and I'll wait and I'll just talk about it at the end. For me, Grendel, and they probably did this intentionally, but Grendel is basically like their Supper's Ready. And I think it's a damn good song. I love Market Square Heroes as well. That's a lot of fun. Charting the Singles, good.
Yeah.
Cinderella Search, Lady Nina,
Like those
Tucks
a lot.
On, kind of silly, but I kind of dig that. What else do I got? He Knows You Know, Gazpacho, Forgotten Son, Slanch Moth, Punch and Judy, Heart of Lothian, The Uninvited Guest, Splintering Hearts, good song. 100 Nights, another good song.
Yep.
Alone Again, The Lap of Luxury, I dig quite a bit. The Hollow Man, Man of a Thousand Faces, The Invisible Man, Marbles. I mean, a lot of really good stuff. I could have gone on and on and on. I said, all right, I'll just kind of leave it at that. But a lot of good songs in this catalog. A lot of really good songs.
Yeah, real good bands. Very consistent to a point. We kind of ended a certain point. However, it doesn't mean everybody needs to, and it's just direction-wise where they're going, and may not be where you and I are really into kind of following in that space. But
yeah,
again, that's just fine. Like your other buddy Steve, who did the show, is really really big into that stuff, and I love his conviction and his case for those later albums. And it's all a matter of taste, isn't it? So it's
there's a lot of people who really dig the more recent stuff a lot and even prefer it over the Fish era. And that's totally cool. I mean, I've listened to all of their albums. I just have found that after Marbles, their music appealed to me. It doesn't appeal to me as much anymore. And I have found, and people have told me, oh, you're totally incorrect in thinking that way. But I find that there's like this kind of sameness through the latter part of their catalog. Good songs, very atmospheric, just doesn't do it for me. And I again, you can't like everything, right? And it's like,
Okay.
and this is no knock against Hogarth, because I think he's a terrific singer, and he's probably a better singer than Fish ever was. But it's
Sure.
just, you know, certain bands come into your life at a certain point in time, and that's when they really affect you. And I just think that, you know, Marillion came into my life right around the tail end of the Fish era. I really got into those albums. And then all of a sudden Hogarth's in the band, and I, you know, kept on listening to them for a number of years. And I liked those first like 5 or so Hogarth era albums. And I kind of lost interest after that. And that's just
Yep.
the way it is. It's not, I don't dislike the stuff. I just, you know, I mean, it is, you know, like Radiation and a couple of those, you know, I don't really do it for me, those albums. But
Yeah.
like I've heard a couple of the more recent ones, the last like 2 or 3 they've done, they're pretty good. Do I like them? Would I go out of my way to listen to them all the time? And yeah, not really. But they're good. People love them, and that's totally cool. Totally cool. But
Yeah, very well said. Couldn't say it better myself. I totally agree with you.
yeah. So, but a lot of good songs. So be interested to see what our viewers come up with. Let's see your top 10 favorite Marillion songs. So if you dig both eras, mix them up and throw them out there. If maybe you only like the Fish era, let's hear your 10 favorite Fish songs. If you only like H era, your favorite Hogarth era songs, or whatever. So it'll be cool. There's so many songs, a lot of albums, a lot of songs, and a lot of really good ones. So visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So thanks to Steve for joining us once again. If you haven't checked out our Dire Straits video, check that out. That went live just a little while ago. Steve is going to come back in the next week or so. We're going to do top 10 songs of Dire Straits. And Steve and I are also cooking some Southern rock stuff. I think we talked about doing the Outlaws and Blackfoot, something like that. So that'll be down the road a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. And we look forward to seeing everybody then. So Steve, thank you, my friend. We'll see you real soon. Everybody
Always
have
a
a
pleasure.
good rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.